Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. They tell me there's other guys. I don't know other guys, so I'm just telling you the ones that I know personally. The Wolf of Wall Street stuff is the closest to mine. He calls it straight line closing. I call it hammer closing. He says, you can't use the word hammer anymore, Dan. I mean, I still do, but he says the PC, takes offense. It's like you're hitting him. Well, I did. So, but his straight line system is the closest I've seen out there to aggressive closing. Of course, he was closing penny stocks for dollars. He'd buy blocks of penny stocks and sell them for dollars. Of course, he went to jail for it, but so he knows how to hammer. And he said, we didn't call it boiler rooms when I was doing it. And he said, well, you just ran a fucking boiler room. That's all you did when you... No, that's not exactly right. I'm trying to distance myself from that. But we did. We have 400 guys in a room like this. We used to call them sweatshops. They now call them call centers. And I'd have a seat about twice as high as this. And I'd ask you, what hand do you wipe your ass with? And you say your right. So then I'd take masking tape and I'd tape the phone. And these days they had phones. I'd tape the phone to your right hand. And everybody asked, what girls, what hand? Okay, and if they were left-handed, I'd tape the phone to your left hand. And when I'm up in my seat like this, perch, if I didn't see the lights glittering off the motherfucking masking tape, boom, I'm on you. When you had to go to the bathroom, you had to ask me permission. And you had to tear the masking tape in your hair and all that shit. And if a guy had a hairy forearm, I tape all the way up his forearm. The trouble with the girls, I hardly found a girl with a hairy forearm. It was tough. But I mean, we sold the shit out of stuff. When I come to work at 8 in the morning, I didn't ask if we made any sales. I mean, how many fucking sales we make today? And he said, oh God, he says, we would have made great partners. No, I don't think I would have gone to jail. But that's the closest to mine, straight line. But it's the same as a hammer. Now, some of you will be offended to use an ex-con's sales techniques. Well, it's the best one that I know, so I'm just telling you. So whether you're offended or not, I don't really give a shit. Okay, hand up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You used to put a $100 bill?
Oh, yep, good. I used to put $100 bills on the ceiling, and one person couldn't reach it. But I'm trying to do teamwork, right? So, but the tallest guy, the next guy, occasionally, we had a bunch of Chinese guys that were hammering Chinese on the phone. And sometimes we had to put 3 guys to get the $100 bill. And we'd put $5,000 of $100 bills in a room this big. And when they got it, there was no withholding, nothing. The accountants fucking went berserk. No withholding. And, I remember picking up a bag of $10,000 from California Bank. There used to be a bank called California Bank. United California Bank. And I lost it. I lost the bag. I put it under my seat, and we stopped for a drink to meet somebody else. And I don't believe the driver took it. But when we came back, it was gone. And so here, and then we found it. We found it. Somebody turned it in because I think they were afraid that when I found out that I'd kill them. But somebody turned it in. But we used to give a lot of cash away. We used to have sales meetings at 7:30 Friday night. Every salesman would be there. Now, 7 out of 400 people, you'd think that they had going to see their kid, their wife, right? Their mother. We never had one absentee because we were paying out cash bonuses. And I used to buy, there was a conference room over a El Dorito or something, and so we have pitchers of margaritas. We used to mix margaritas by the tank full. And they go right back up and start selling. And but now that's considered, I don't know what's considered now. Vulgar. I don't know the words that describe this, but it works. It still works. Yes, sir.
On going and seeing the sellers, would you have seen the tax returns and financials?
Remember, we haven't got to that part, but yes. When they're interested, when I'm going to meet them, like you said, face to face, I'm sure it'll be easy for you to get your tax returns, 3 years tax returns from your accountant. Now, I know that's a lie that I just said, but if I don't tell you it's easy to get the tax return, then you're never going to get them. Okay? Getting tax returns in India, Gandhi will have to reappear to the accountants to get them. Okay? But 3 years tax returns and 3 years financials, and normally that's QuickBooks or some bullshit. But if they're 10% the same, plus or minus, that's good enough information to go forward. They'll normally say they can't get the tax returns, okay? Or the bullshit line is, I filed for extension, okay? And then when you get the tax returns, you realize there's no extension step. But anyway, but 10% plus or minus. And then, but I've seen, let's just say the tax return said $1 million and the financials, internal financials said $1 million. Okay, let's just say they worked out the same. By the time we get done with due diligence, I mean, I've seen that. I've seen some of the times it's knocked down 20, 30%. Because everybody's living out of their business. The cars that your wife and your kids drive are coming out of the business. The apartment, secret apartment you got your mistress in is coming out of the business. I mean, and by the time you readjust everything, and the other thing is, you're never going to readjust everything because you're never going to find everything because you're not going to be there for fucking 10 weeks. But if you find 90% of the shit, you're not going to get hurt too badly. And then quite often the husband will take you aside. Do we have to show that? Because normally they're spending money that their wife doesn't know about. Once in a while, rarely, the wife would do that, but rarely. Most assholes are the guys, which I don't have to explain to the women that. They're just, they're assholes, they're no fucking good. And so, but you're stuck with them. So, good, bad, or indifferent, especially Latinos. I never knew a Latino, you know who I'm looking at? I never knew a Latino that didn't have at least 3 girls extra on the side. I'm sure you're the exception. I know that's not happening to you. I know when they come from Honduras, they're loyal, faithful, right? Right. Okay. So you've had the tax returns and the financials beforehand. So when you go, you got something to talk about. Yes, sir.
So do you take your CFO with you?
Okay, we haven't got to that part again, but since you bring it up, okay. The first meeting, you and your CFO. But that's not a due diligence meeting, remember. That's just a meeting to, have a Kool-Aid or iced tea or whatever the fuck it is. But the next time, see, the first meeting is as friendly as you're going to be. No, as friendly as you're going to be is the call. From the call down, people will say that it's getting more unfriendly. It's not more unfriendly. It's just that you're asking hard questions. Once you get past the iced tea, you're going to start asking hard questions. And again, I love the South. They've got some answers. I mean, it's just beyond your comprehension about shit. Dating back to the Civil War. I mean, they got reasons that they've been telling people for 100 years. But your industry experts and your CEO and or your CFO, not necessarily you, will know, how much of this is bullshit and how much of it's not bullshit. But you're never going to get 100% satisfaction. And one of the things that I don't neglect to say, but there's intergalactic truth, there's intercontinental truth, and there's our truth, and then there's their truth. You're never going to get 100% of the questions answered to your satisfaction. But you have to learn, and your team will learn, which of the questions are deal killers when you get bullshit answers or shady answers. There's certain things that are absolute deal killers, and there's but most of the questions aren't deal killers. They're just not. Normally the owner is the only signatory on the bank account. Normally. And I don't want you to be signatory on your new company's bank account. I want plausible deniability. So there's somebody in between you and the stealing. I'm not suggesting you would steal, young man, but I want somebody in between you and the stealing. And so you have limits like one guy can sign up to, $1,000. 2 guys can sign from 1,000 to 10,000, and then you need somebody above 10,000. But I don't want you to be on the bank account. And right now, as Dan Locke says, he checks sales every morning. What he really checks is bank accounts every morning. Now, I'm not saying it's because most of his customers are Chinese. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying because most of his employees are Chinese. I'm not saying that. But it's not a coincidence. He checks the bank accounts daily. Daily. Of course, he's steeped in one of those ethnicities I've talked about. But nobody treats a Chinese guy worse than a Chinese guy. Nobody treats an Indian worse than an Indian. So now you are there, and using the straight line or the hammer close, you're there till the deal's either died on the kitchen table or lived. You will not have the same effectiveness coming back the second time or the third time or the fourth time. The most gravitas and power you're going to have is that first initial negotiation vis-a-vis price. Because between the first meeting and the second meeting, something's going to happen. Shit happens. And the shit that happens worldwide, the Federal Reserve decides to double interest rate. Something, and I used to stay, And they used to say, Dan's really homeless. This is the only place he's got. You got either this kitchen table or no place. Not exactly true, but it was good for my image. Or I was illegal alien and all kinds of stuff, which I wasn't. My mother was illegal alien, and I couldn't go back when I was down in Texas and there. I couldn't go through customs again. He hadn't bribed. They didn't have Homeland Security then. So all kinds of bullshit they made up, most of which was untrue. And then again. Your first offer is 100% seller finance. They want $1 million. What if I could show you I could pay you $1.2 million and pay you 5% on your money? As opposed to, before that, you're asking, what are you going to do with the money? They're going to retire normally. Because these people, our age group, our sweet spot is roughly 60 to 75. Roughly 60 to 75. And they will have retirement in mind. There's another template. Have you ever considered selling, or have you ever considered what you're going to do at retirement? So you bring it down even closer. And they don't have good answers for these questions. You'd think a guy 71 years old had an answer, but he doesn't. And then Arvie and Margaret were my two favorites. Margaret will say, Arvie, I told you. God sent him to us. The Lord's looking after us. When I was young, it was hard for me not to start laughing, I don't think the Lord sent me exactly, ma'am, but I'm here to do the Lord's work. I still remember saying that. And I used to, just like my hands are doing now, muscle memory. I'm here to do the Lord's work. I'm happy that you're happy. And I'm still here. We all laughed, but it works. And you are their succession plan. You are their retirement plan. You're doing them a service. Their kids don't want the goddamn thing. And God knows their grandkids don't want the goddamn thing. Sometimes, though, after you make a deal with Arvie and Margaret, she's 70, he's 73, and then the kids smell money. Their kids. And then they try to get involved, even after you have a signed deal. And then that's a whole other, that happens not too often, but it does happen. So you better, the next meeting you come with is your in-house lawyer. And remember, you want them to have their separate lawyers. Separate lawyers. But when they say, the Lord sent you to me, and I'm sure some of you will, yes, without even batting an eyelash. How did you know? And what I used to do, because I did a lot of cold calling, I try to make a game of it. How many no's am I going to have to take? And I assumed I assumed a yes every time, but how many no's am I going to have to take before I get a yes? Now, sales history tells me, data tells me, 17 no's before you get a yes. 17. Now, you don't want to hear that, I'm sure, but when you follow this program, you're not using the normal sales techniques. You're using your derivative of the hammer, and it's not 17. I mean, even the blind kids got a better closing ratio than that. The deaf kids, the retarded kids, we got a better closing ratio than that. Because our templates are state-of-the-art, best of best practices. This shit worked yesterday and is working someplace today. So you're not using an old sales manual that was written when Think and Go Rich was written. And these are today's circumstances. So that 1 in 17 is, 1 in 3. And some of the guys, like Thomas, I mean, he's got, like a 1 in 2. And then once you have, let's say you're down in the Oklahoma and you're rolling up mobile home parks. I'm not suggesting this. And you're in Oklahoma and you're down there in that area, news travels like lightning. I mean, I used to look for the president of the local mobile home association and sell him. And, I mean, within 48, 72 hours, everybody in fucking Texas, East Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, knew about it. Well, when is that Mexican going to be coming to town? I remember I set up an office in Stroud, Oklahoma, to cover the business between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. We did so much fucking business there. And Stroud is a shithole. It makes Mesa look like Metropolis, Stroud, Oklahoma. And and once you get not just the good old boys, or once you get the blue bloods in the Massachusetts, Connecticut area, once you penetrated their bullshit, and once and you look for the president of the associations, you sell the doctor, the president of the local doctors association, whatever it is, and you don't have to tell him to advertise for you. He can't keep his fucking mouth shut. I sold out and you didn't, like that. And all these things, and now your board will know some of these things, but they won't know all of them. But once you get in a role, and the greatest thing is sales momentum. And you do everything, you're like in a sports franchise. They do everything humanly possible not to lose that momentum. And the same with this. I mean, and I used to hate the holidays, other than I knew the banks were putting out more money, because somebody had commitments to do this, that, and the other thing, and again, I shouldn't be proud of this, but we celebrated more Christmases after Christmas than during Christmas, because I was always selling. And I sold right up to the 31st of January, 31st of December, 11:59, and there's not many. Only salesmen are on planes that late on New Year's Eve. I mean, and they all look beat up and tuckered out, but they were selling down to the last minute. And I used to be one of those guys. Any questions? Yes, sir, in the back.
I do not know the system of John Belfer, but I know this opening, then qualifying, and then closing the leads. How is it similar in your process?
Opening, you qualify first, otherwise you're not talking to them. Ours is qualify first. I'm not talking to you unless I know that you're a legitimate, motivated seller. Okay? You prove that to me by sending me your tax returns and your internal financials. That's how you said, yes, I thought about selling. And then you requalify yourself by sending your tax returns and your internal financials. Okay? So before I'm in front of you, I already have that positive information. And once I've gotten that positive information, I have sent you my executive summary with everybody from Moses to Muhammad on the board. And so I'm set up like the book by Ringer, Winning Through Intimidation. I've traveled 200 miles with a briefcase. I'm an expert. So you're very qualified. Whether you sell them or not is up to your personal individual skills. Normally, the board member that you bring has little or no sales skills, and you're going to give him a cue card. You know, the 4 or 5 points you want him to make sure he gets across or she gets across. Because left to their own devices, ex-CPA from KPMG doesn't know shit. And some of the guys, I mean, especially for the very young guys in the room and gals in the room, they will not like you 25 years old giving this guy 60 years old direction. Then you pick the wrong guy or the wrong gal. I mean, you step into the breach. In some cases, you tell the chairman, I mean, our extra CPA on the board is, you know, he's lost the plot, or however you phrase it. But the bottom line is he lost the plot. When you take these people out there, you want them to be supportive of our program. And the program is we're doing, not a favor, we're doing them a service. They had no succession plan. We're their pension plan now, et cetera, et cetera. And we're forming the sale. We're equipping the transaction for their needs, which is all true. Which is all true. Yes, ma'am.
Do they ever ask to sign an NDA before they send you their tax return?
Yes. Yes, and and sometimes you sign it, and sometimes you don't. But Josh, the NDA will be to you in your email, and then he never sends it, and they forget about it. I'm not suggesting you do that, but an NDA is worthless unless you're got money to fight. And you don't have money to fight, and the seller rarely has money to fight. But NDAs, are okay. YouTube, thank you.